The rain fell in steady sheets, drumming against the tin roof of the small animal shelter at the edge of town. Inside, the smell of disinfectant and damp fur lingered, mixed with faint whimpers, barks, and the rattling of metal cages. For most people, the shelter was the last place they wanted to be. But for Emily Carter, it was a place she felt strangely drawn to that gloomy Saturday morning. She wasn't looking for perfection. She wasn't even sure she was ready for another dog. Her last companion, a golden retriever named Max, had passed away almost a year ago, leaving a silence in her small suburban home that echoed louder than any noise. Friends told her she wasn't ready yet. But loneliness has a way of whispering in your ear until you finally listen. So there she was, 32 years old, soaked from the rain, stepping hesitantly down the narrow hallway of kennels. Most of the dogs wagged their tails eagerly when she passed by. Some barked for attention, some whimpered, and others pressed their noses through the metal bars as if begging to be chosen. Puppies with bright eyes. Sleek, handsome dogs that looked like they belonged in glossy calendars. But then she stopped. In the far corner, half hidden in the shadows, was a dog that didn't move like the others. His fur was patchy, with bald spots that revealed scarred skin beneath. One of his ears was missing a piece, and his eyes, large, brown, soulful, seemed almost too heavy for his thin frame. His body was oddly shaped, one leg slightly bent, making him stand awkwardly on 3 good paws and a crooked fourth. The sign on his kennel read simply, "Name, Oscar, breed mixed, age, 4 years," and underneath, in bold red letters, "Special needs, hard to place." Emily crouched down, pressing her fingers gently against the bars. To her surprise, Oscar didn't bark or cower. Instead, he tilted his head, studying her, and then slowly, cautiously, he came forward. His nose touched her fingers, and his eyes met hers. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't desperation. It was something quieter, deeper. A plea for connection. "Poor guy," the shelter volunteer muttered behind her. "He's been here almost a year. People come in, but once they see him, well, you know. No one wants the ugly dog." Ugly. The word stung. Emily looked back at Oscar. Ugly? Maybe to some. But in those weary eyes, she saw something no one else seemed to notice. Resilience. She straightened up. "I want to meet him." The process wasn't easy. The staff explained that Oscar had been rescued from a dog-fighting ring. He wasn't a fighter, himself more likely a bait dog, used to train others. That explained the scars, the missing ear, the crooked leg. He had suffered more than most dogs ever should. "He's not aggressive," the volunteer assured her. "But he's wary. It takes time for him to trust." Honestly, most people don't want to put in the effort. But Emily didn't flinch. For reasons she couldn't quite explain, she felt a pull toward this broken dog. Maybe because she understood what it meant to feel broken herself. 2 hours later, the paperwork was signed. A leash was clipped to Oscar's collar. And for the first time in months, Oscar stepped outside, not into another stranger's arms, but into a home waiting just for him. The first weeks were difficult. Oscar refused to climb stairs. He trembled at the sound of car engines. He cowered when Emily raised her hand too quickly, even if it was just to brush her hair away. At night he paced the living room, whining softly, as if afraid the shadows would swallow him. He didn't play with toys. He barely ate. Friends told Emily she was crazy. "You should have adopted a puppy," they said. Something cute, something easy. But Emily refused to give up. She spoke to him gently every morning, left treats on the floor for him to find, sat with him in silence, giving him space but never leaving him alone. And slowly, something began to shift. The first time Oscar wagged his tail, it was just a tiny twitch. Almost uncertain, Emily cried. The first time he dared to rest his head on her lap, she sat there for hours, afraid to move, letting him know he was safe. Day by day, the ugliest dog began to reveal his hidden beauty. One crisp autumn morning, Emily took Oscar to the park. She was nervous. It was his first time around other people and dogs. She kept him on a short leash, prepared for anything. At first the stares came. Parents pulled their children closer. A man jogging by muttered under his breath, "What a freaky-looking mutt." Emily's chest tightened, but she held her head high. She knew the truth. Oscar was more than his scars. Then it happened. Near the playground, a little girl dropped her stuffed bunny. Before Emily could react, Oscar limped forward, picked up the toy gently in his mouth, and carried it back to the child. His crooked gait drew curious eyes, but the moment he lowered the bunny into the girl's hands, something magical happened. The little girl smiled. She hugged him, and Oscar for the first time wagged his tail proudly, without hesitation. Gasps rippled through the park. Strangers who had looked at him with pity or disgust now saw something different. Kindness, loyalty, a heart bigger than his scars. Emily felt tears in her eyes. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. Word spread quickly. Emily shared Oscar's story online, posting pictures of his journey from the shelter to her home. At first, only a few people noticed, but soon the story went viral. People around the world were touched by the tale of the ugliest dog who wasn't ugly at all, just misunderstood. Offers poured in. Donations to the shelter. Messages from other adopters inspired to give unwanted animals a chance. A local news station invited Emily and Oscar to share their story on TV. When the camera lights came on, Oscar sat calmly by Emily's side, his crooked legs stretched out, his one good ear perked up. The anchor smiled and said, "This is the dog people once called unadoptable. But today he's a hero of hope." And just like that, Oscar became a symbol. Not of ugliness, but of resilience. Months passed and Oscar blossomed. He learned to play fetch, though his crooked run made it more of a hop than a sprint. He learned to climb stairs, one shaky step at a time. He even learned to trust strangers, offering them cautious licks and gentle nudges. But more than that, he transformed Emily too. Before Oscar, Emily carried her own scars, silent ones, born from heartbreak and loneliness. She had lost confidence, lost joy. But caring for a dog who needed so much patience and love reminded her of her own strength. In saving Oscar, she realized Oscar had saved her too. A year after his adoption, the shelter held its annual fundraiser. Emily and Oscar were invited as special guests. As they walked onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause. The same dog, once abandoned, mocked, and overlooked, now stood proudly before hundreds of people. His fur had grown back in patches, his eyes shone with confidence, and his tail wagged without fear. Emily spoke softly into the microphone. "When I first saw Oscar, people told me he was too ugly, too broken. But what I've learned is that true beauty isn't about appearances. It's about resilience. It's about the ability to love despite everything. Oscar isn't the ugliest dog. He's the most beautiful soul I've ever known." The audience rose to their feet. Some wiped away tears. Others clapped until their hands ached. And Oscar, once the forgotten dog in the corner of a shelter, became the living proof that love can turn even the deepest scars into something extraordinary.